Began to run out of easy to get at oil a few years ago. And some people said, oh, this will be the end of oil and we'll have to switch to something else. Would that had been true. Instead, what the oil industry did was say, we're going to tear apart the world looking for the last pools of oil.
Tenemos los mismos sufrimientos y vamos a unirnos, pero no solamente los pueblos indígenas, sino todos para combatir este mal de la ambición y juntos construir un modelo distinto que sea sostenible para la humanidad y que la Amazonía aporte también con la vida en este planeta.
Of the environmental holocaust that's affecting my people now, and from the forest removals of my grandmas and grandpas and those that came before from our original homelands in the territory called Nebraska or Nebraska. We live here now in this territory that is impacted by the fossil fuel peoples. I raised my children who are all adults. I'm a grandmother and a great-grandmother and a companion, 51 years now to my husband. And it has been our life's work to try to create a space for them as Indigenous people to grow up within their culture, within their understanding of the relationship with all that is. We're part of the great mystery. And we belong to the nations of the plants, the ones that breathe with us, the trees. We belong to the nation of the human in its relationship with the forelegs, the fins, the water herself, the sun, the moon, the tides, and everything that the great mystery put in place. And when we came to participate in this film, it was because of these lovely young people, the Sophie and Clemént, that just literally stayed with us for a period of time, got to know us, and we got to know them. And we trusted them to be in our home and to share the messages that come from our people, and to also be part of this larger understanding of what is the rights of nature. We humans are so full of ego at times that we forget our connectedness with all that is. And so part of this filmmaking was simply being who we are as Indigenous people and bringing to light the cosmology of understanding our relationships with all beings, not simply other human beings, and to also recognize this time of crisis, this time of climate change. We've been told in our territory that it's part of the great purification, that the Mother Earth has to heal, and she sometimes has to have the fires to clean the landscapes. The tornadoes and the hurricanes are bigger, the winds are stronger, the ice storms are bigger, in order for her to be able to continue living. And we as humans are trying to bring ourselves back into alignment with the natural laws. We met many, many incredible people on the journey that these filmmakers took, many of them in person, that are global entities that travel around our Mother Earth to try to bring us into an enlightened state of being, as our ancestors were, as your ancestors were. And so to share this film with you is to share a very deep piece of ourselves, a very deep portion of our hearts, our hopes, and our aspirations, as well as to honor our ancestors and those unborn yet. So to discuss that stories of my mother's. But to put it simply, it was a time that humans longed to be part of this sacred circle of life that existed on what is now called Earth. And in order to be a part of that, human had to promise to come in harmony and to live in harmony within a natural cycle, within a sacred cycle of being. And I believe all around the globe that indeed happened for all of us at one time. And I believe in many ways technology has begun to help us to create these false realities. I'm living in a home now with a heater, where in the original ways that would be a fire. And yet that takes trees. There's many ways that we can come back into renewable energies. That's also another story. But I think that also to simplify things even more is to say that if you are a living entity, and all things are, you must eat. What does a human eat? You must breathe, you must drink, you must have warmth. And all of those things are part of what already exists here. We humans, you and I today, we have taken in food. And all of that food comes from the source of life, which is our Mother Earth. She helps us to grow these plants that we ingest. She also helps the forelegs to grow, and the fins and the wings and all things that are already alive there. And she nurtures us. She gives us that unconditional love that our own mothers may have done when we were born. That helps these cells that are these robes, these bodies that we wear over our spirits to multiply and to create this place for us to live, for our spirits to live inside of. This sacred breath is not a breath that has only happened when you and I breathe it in at that first moment of birth. It's a breath that flows on the winds from all direction. It has passed through a deer. It has flown on the wings of an eagle. It has been part of the trees' gift of oxygen as we give carbon dioxide. There's an intricate cycle that we share all of our life cycle with. The water herself has a life and an entity that is something human ego has not been able to acknowledge. We want to act like we own everything. There's carbon trading where even the air is being bought and sold. There's bottled water and plastics, that come from a natural source. There are places that you can buy fire already canned in a can, and you light it up and it burns, and people take it camping. But all those are natural elements that have been here long before humans joined this cycle of life. And if we eat, drink, or breathe, we have to acknowledge that we are part of all of those things that we've ingested. We're part of those things that we breathe. We're part of the sacred water itself, even if it came in the form of a thunder nation, even if it came in the ice cube of your drink, even if it came in our coffee. It's water, it's liquid. It inhabits our body, and our bodies grow strong and continue to live. As women, we should recognize that the moon herself has a rhythm that helps to govern everything within us. It's a beautiful cycle. And for humans to feel separate from it is not only a huge mistake and misunderstanding, but it's also very dangerous, because if we remove ourselves from that, we could very likely remove ourselves entirely from the face of the earth through our hubris, through our ego.
Thank you so much, Casey. Ana Hontanilla just wrote that this idea of nature that has a soul is enlightening, that breaking the balance destroys nature's soul, that without her soul, nature will not be able to live. And thank you very much for that idea that is also part of the film. But I want to open the floor for anyone who wants to make a comment, a question, a reflection about what you saw here. And you have Casey, who is a light that we can follow, that we can work together, that we can try to put these ideas together. Thank you so much. Anyone, please. Chat, you are welcome. I think Ana Luis, do you want to have a question? Okay, and
Hi,
please.
it's wonderful to meet you virtually. Everyone here, I really appreciated the film. It was beautiful. I do wonder about the Indigenous Women's Alliance that you've been working on and helping to spread. I was trying to find it online. I didn't know if there's a way to follow and support and be involved in that effort.
I'm a bit new to computers, so it takes me a while to even figure out. I'm very proud of myself for Zooming these days, different world for this woman. The International Indigenous Women's Treaty, I have been asked many times, and generally I have one of the young folks on this call with me that can just whip the link up and tell you how to participate. I'm not one of those. I work a great deal with an organization called Movement Rights. Pardon me. And if you look up Movement Rights, there is some information about the treaty. And Penny Opal Plant is one of the signatories on that, who was with us from the beginning, and many of her thoughts and words flow through that treaty. It has, it's impossible for me to claim something that is spiritual, because those things come from a place that's much higher than I am, much more defined in its own way. And at a time that I was in Ecuador, and actually prior to that, there were thoughts and feelings about this treaty needing to be recognized. I can't say created, because we're not that, we're not creators. And so it took much prayer to help it to come into this physical realm. And it is a spiritual entity that belongs to itself. There has never been, in my understanding, a time that Indigenous women in particular, ever took the initiative to recognize something that needed to be put into a form like this. And the treaties primarily that we've had to deal with are with governmental entities. And this is not about that. This is about recognizing that putting our energies together with what is already in existence can help us through this critical time that is called climate change. It's about coming together, women coming together and making a pledge to participate at new moon times, at full moon times, at solstices, and those times that are already in place, that we then collect either in prayer or action. And when we make that commitment, it can be a commitment that for us in this time of COVID, maybe we're in our own homes, but we're tuning in the manner in which we know how, individually, with the collective of the women. And we have our prayer for peace, our prayer for the water, our prayer for the air, the earth, and ourselves. And as women, so one of the first things I was taught when I was young is that we must pray for ourselves. Because if we don't pray for ourselves and make ourselves whole, what do we have to give to others? How can we pray for someone else and give them strength if we haven't given that to ourselves first. An empty cup can't pour water. So all of these are combined thoughts that are part of what we're supposed to be doing, and the direction came and the words were put, and then in a sacred vow, we came together with that understanding. It's all pretty hard to put into words. That's as close as I can come.
I'm sure, and I know that the Earth and all of us around the world really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The work that you do.
Weblaha. Thank you. And thank you for you. One of the things also that is part of our teachings is to recognize ourselves, to recognize that at this moment, you, young woman, what's your name?
Anna.
Anna. You could be anywhere doing anything. You could be taking a walk. You could be in front of the TV. You could be sitting in a bath. But you, because of who you are, what your spirit has guided you to do, heard these words tonight, heard this message. To me, that means that you have something huge that you're sharing with me as well. And I thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Casey, for that. You said we are not creators, but probably women, you, mothers, grandmothers, girls, young girls are the closest to a creator that it can be in the human race. And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for teaching. And I have a question about teaching, because this is an event put in a university settings, and we use the university as a space of learning. But you had said in many other moments too that learning takes place in these other spaces and in our interactions with the indigenous communities of the Americas. We have this image of el fogón, the fire, right? Is the place in which learning takes place, the kitchen table, the place in which we gather to hear stories, to tell stories, to be close to this element that also put it in contact with the cosmos. And it's this place of learning that I want you to comment a little bit. Where is the place of learning? Where is the place in which we have to get together to try to understand this?
I think that a lot of that depends on what you want to learn. What are you looking to learn? One of our great spiritual leaders, Leonard Crodog, my son repeated what he said. He said, I am at the University of the Universe. I found that profound because we all are. But how does that manifest in what we're seeking to have input in? I've often made the joke, because my granddaughter travels with me a great deal, and my daughters and their daughters are always around. Right at this time, we don't get to physically be together much, but I tell them that they attend MIT, which for me means matriarch in training. I'm a graduate of MIT because that is the manner in which I learned how to be a human being, was by listening to my mother and her contemporaries. She was born in 1914 here in this occupied territory called Oklahoma. She was first generation born in captivity. We were in captivity on reservations where we were killed if we left this confined territory. And she carried with her the knowledges of the ones that lived in the natural way in the original territory that Wakanda, the great mystery, asked us to caretake in the generations before us. And so her teachings were my university, and they continue to enact within me. But there are times, yesterday, for instance, that my companion and I sat down by one of our sacred places here. We live in the country, and the creek runs around us, and the winds were blowing, and the birds were singing, and they were teaching us because we were there to learn. And when one sits inside, and you know COVID is raging everywhere, but yet you see the birds, the woodpeckers are still building their nests and living within the natural laws that were put in front of them. The water still flows according to where she needs to be. She goes over the rocks and she falls down in rain and she travels in the humidity on the air. The wind blows as it should. And through those sacred elements, there is also a story. So one can learn. We had a fire burning down there, and much is going on in our world. Although if one walked upon us and saw us, we look like two elders sitting near a fire in the country. But at that moment, we were learning from those elements. That too is a university. Conversely, I have a grandson that is in pharmacy school out in New Mexico, learning Western medicines because that is where his heart led him. And when this time of COVID came up, he's guiding many through this terrible tragedy that is happening worldwide because of humans creating situations of unhealth. And so every place is a place of learning if one seeks it and doesn't ignore the voices. But you can't learn everything from a book. You cannot learn everything that fits everyone all the time. One book has an enormous amount of information that came from one human being with many sources of learning. And it's a thing of great value to me. But I would not read the same book as you. You would not hear the same thing on the wind as I just heard. You wouldn't know the same woodpecker as I do. You know, it's we're just very blessed to have minds and spirits with which to interpret what our minds are given.
Embodied knowledge, embodiment, fixing it to our bodies and our present and past and ahead, probably. Thank you. Any other question for Casey, guys?
Hi. I want to say first that you're an amazing person. I'm really privileged to be on this call and have the privilege to see the movie, and it was brilliant. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that you know, how this is going to impact everyone, and especially people of color, and how race, gender, and all these intersectionality of identities play a huge role. And it just like, it was amazing you guys point out the hierarchy within our system. And I was wondering if you guys, your organization is working with other minority groups that are doing similar work, and why you think should be done in schools and school curriculums to educate younger people about environment and the huge impact it has on Indigenous people, but also people of color.
I was on an interesting call yesterday, and thank you. Thank you for all of your questions. Talking to some representatives in Congress about environmental justice. And I said, first, we need to understand that indeed words do have power. And what you are truly talking about is environmental injustice. Because those of us, you and I, who are people of color, are born into a world that doesn't value our original ways and our original teachings, and have in fact taught us to try to fit the cookie cutter mold that everyone else fits. We're never going to fit that. Never intended to. The Creator didn't put us here for that. We were put here with our cellular memories, with our blood memories, coursing through that. And until we acknowledge those and participate fully in the wonder of what the great mystery intended, then we're always going to be that square peg trying to fit in a round hole. You know, our original ways are circle ways, reciprocal ways. Within our original societies, many of us didn't have jails, sexism, ageism. Things were handled in a society way rather than in a manner of strict punishment and reward, Pavlovian style. And to your first question, yes, people of color are the primary people that I work with. We recognize one another. We have a certain common understanding of spirit that I relate to and I understand. I suppose I'm as conditioned as many others in distrust of the colonizers that came onto our territory with the ideas of enslaving us, bringing slaves, of treating sources of life as their resource to pad a bank account that is full of falsities in its inception. It's very funny to me to consider, my phone's ringing, my husband's going to get it. Please ignore that for a minute. It's very funny of me for the same people who have those huge bank accounts full of a conception of wealth inside there, not understanding that means nothing if you have nothing to drink, if your water is polluted. And it doesn't even exist in reality, but somebody has tricked you into believing that, just like when the sun rises is the beginning of day, but somebody has conditioned us to this thing called time, and it's and a clock that governs us. So it is up to us to kind of decolonize those thoughts. That's the jargon that's used these days. And to understand that if the wind is blowing pollution over the Ponca Nation or your people as a frontline community, that's where the extraordinary amount of pollution happens, is to people of color and people of poverty, which is often us. We are also caretakers of 70% of what is left of natural life, the indigenous people of the world are. And it's because we understand innately what is important. And for people of your age, it is very, very critical that you understand that there is no more time to put up with the nonsense of fossil fuels and elected officials who do not represent us in the truest way. You are the only power that is true power. You are part of a very incredible portion of natural law that can do anything that anyone else can or anything else can. I had seen something from a South American friend that I have embodied, and that is part of me now. That as a a person who is at Standing Rock with my son's daughters as water protectors, to come to understand that we are not protecting nature. We are nature protecting itself. Think of that. Think of that. That's about as awesome as awesome can be. We are nature protecting itself. So let's just do that. Let's just warrior up and let's do that. Every breath we take is a gift. Recognize that every drink of water, I love my water. I say thank you to her all the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you so much. Anyone? We're running out of time. If you have any other question, Tim, I think.
I was just wondering, as I guess a member of the privileged white minority, I guess you'd say, in the world, what the constructs, the cultural presuppositions that we're born with and that we're taught as children and grow up as, have differences, and especially in this generation now with the kind of transformation that people are going through, particularly young people of all backgrounds who realize that we don't have more time, that we have to do what we have to do now. How can people of, like you did when you went to Latin America and came back, how can you bridge cultural differences in this representing nature herself? How do you bring something of worth from your own cultural heritage while at the same time respecting that of worth of other people's cultural heritage in order to save the planet?
Thank you, Tim. And I want, because it's on the same line, Juan, do you want to open your mic and ask the question you type in the chat? Because it's about healing too.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Gracias por estar
Miguel.
aquí.
Yeah, thank you, grandmother Cassie, and all the filmmakers and the team of this amazing project. I'm speaking from the Cherokee territory here in North Carolina. I'm originally from the Andes, and I'm thinking about the tar sands and what is happening there in Lago Agrio in Ecuador, these big like scars on the Earth Mother. And I'm also thinking about all the damage that has been done with the uranium mining in many places in the planet. And this is a question that was asked by an elder, Diné elder, and is how can we heal a society if the Earth Mother is sick? So that's the question, and it has been always, around. And I have asked this question to many elders, and I was just thinking, if maybe grandmother Cassie can share something about it. And thank you again.
Healing and bridging cultural divide. Great to finish. Thank you so much.
So it feels as if these questions are questions that you both answered already, but we can say more words about them if you should choose to. I think that the answer often lies within oneself, and certainly within our youth, as you mentioned, that they are totally aware that we can no longer continue pointing fingers at each other and saying, you're brown, and so I don't like that about you. And the Tim, when you spoke about we're born with these certain ways and we're taught even more, we're not actually born with the predisposition to be judgmental of one another in terms of color or age or sexism. We are born and imbued with certain gifts, no doubt, and certain cellular memories, but those are not contained within an infant. An infant grows up learning from the get-go how it is that one is supposed to interact. You know, you teach them dogs can be scary and they might bite you. By whatever it is that we put into their minds and in front of them about how they should treat people of color or not treat them, or even recognize that they exist. You know, those are very taught things, and they come in very insidious ways. Sometimes it's couched in religion, not spiritualism, but religion. What happened here in the United States and around the world in terms of appropriating the land base and the ways of our people and killing us and putting us through this horrendous genocide that's happened to the indigenous people came because the Catholic Church had a papal bull edict that was to say that the doctrine of discovery meant if you come onto the shores of a particular place and the people there aren't Christianized, then everything that they are, have, or will have belongs to you because you're a Christian. So many of our things are based in a false assumption. And the only way, as the young man who spoke to us earlier, is to start peeling away from ourselves those assumptions and to utilize this media, to utilize this time that we're staying at home doing these Zoom things. And whatever message or feeling that you are engendered with after this conversation, don't let it stop with you. It has to continue. This conversation has to continue in whatever form you choose to take it, whether it's to look at your politicians and say, we demand a just transition away from fossil fuels and into renewable energies. The sun will always shine. We are blessed that way. We know that solar energy is a good thing. We can go into our municipalities and say, I've heard about this thing called rights of nature. It's in Ecuador. It's in the Wanganui River in New Zealand, recognizing that the river is an entity within itself. The people around Lake Erie, in order to stop pollution, hundreds of thousands have come together to present to their city councils that they want to recognize the rights of Lake Erie to exist in its original condition. There are ways that we can be inventive, and simply by taking a step back and recognizing how things did work and how do we translate that into today's world and certainly into the future.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Thank you so much, Casey, for all your wisdom and for being there strong in these times of darkness for many. Thank you for allowing ourselves to think and to keep flowing through these thoughts and these words and this example. And I hope, as Walter Colton says, that with a new administration, a new sun will rise, that this struggle for the rethinking of Keystone XL will be buried again, and that the people that had spoken and their words and their treaties will be honored, and that we move to a new scenario in which the old and the young all together will move in one direction, and that healing could happen. I hope so. And with people like all of you here tonight, I think things can happen. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Casey, we cannot hug you, but thank you very much. I felt your warmth.
Thank you.
And like the same of everybody around. For me, it has been very special to be able to share this in a difficult time for me. Have a great night, and we'll see each other in more events like this, and keep this flowing and share the word. Have a good evening.
Thank you. It's an honor to share this moment.